So we're at Curzon Soho, one of the loveliest cinemas in London. You're Owen Kline, I'm Simran Hans.
As of now, we could switch personalities by the end of this.
We could, but this is a comic, not a comic, this is real life.
It's real life. Okay. Okay.
How often do you go to the cinema?
These days, like twice a week.
What do you mean these days? Is there a time before when you used to go more often?
Yeah.
What's your relationship to going to the movies?
You know, I used to go to, you know, like generic popcorn movies as like a kid, and then as a teenager, like 13 or 14, I discovered Anthology Film Archives in New York, which is a film museum, and kind of they have an incredible kind of collection of experimental and avant-garde, you know, international cinema in-house, and it has 2 screens, and that kind of broke the door down for me for going to like just the sort of rep culture in New York, and it's really it's always really been a part of my life pretty early. Just going to Film Forum, I remember there was like, yeah, maybe when I was in like junior year of high school or something like that, they did, no, sophomore year, they did a Woody Allen retrospective and played every single Woody Allen movie, sort of, I think somewhat sequentially. So I caught all these ones that I hadn't seen, and that was the first kind of one where I really had an appetite to just kind of like check off and see all of these ones and try to kind of complete the filmography. And then just growing up in New York, that was great because, you know, it's great to rent. It's, you know, we had Kim's Video and stuff and could rent all this madness there, but then there was, for the kind of classic stuff and even off the beaten path stuff, there was just these incredible, you know, programs, you know, Film Forum and Anthology and BAM, and, you know, they're all still around. You know?
So when you're going to the cinema, let's say twice a week, are you going to see old movies or new movies?
Old. I don't see new movies. Once in a while, that someone will like convince me, like, you should go out and see this, it's a new movie, but I don't remember what the last new movie I saw was.
You're a rep rat at heart. I
guess so. Well, I guess in high school, I just sort of was convinced that if I kind of sort of just like created some sort of small fallout shelter in my bedroom of, you know, like monster movies I would tape off TV and stupid novelty records and all the things that I liked, and just, you know, I just was like kind of like an avid junk collector and video collector, and would rent cult movies at Kim's and tape the fucked up scenes on, make compilation tapes, and I just was like very focused on the idea of just kind of like the vacuum seal of, well, I hate all this stuff that's coming out in high school. I hated all this kind of like, the kind of twee nonsense at the time of like independent movies, and was just kind of like, after seeing like, I don't want to name a movie from 2005 or 6 that I hated, but I was just kind of like, get me, you know, I'm not interested in new stuff in general. It was like a snot, you know what I mean? Like a 15, 16-year-old snot who thinks he knows better. So that I've never really been able to shake, unfortunately. I don't know if that makes me juvenile, but whatever, you know? I think, you know, there's still plenty. There's so many old movies that I still have not gotten to see. I still haven't seen like every William Wellman movie or something, you know what I mean? There's just certain guys that I love, and the checklist never ends.
Tell me about the last cinema experience you had that moved you.
I'm trying to think of the last
or that like was significant in some kind of way, you know.
The last kind of moving experience I had at the movies, I guess, and though it sounds solipsistic, Lincoln Center, the Walter Reed Theater programmed Funny Pages at their theater, and leading up to the release, the August 26th release, they did a week of films that they let me program, you know what I mean? And that was like a dream growing up in New York, going to rep things, seeing, you know, eye patch directors at Anthology, and like getting to sort of pick a program, you know, and that was like Raoul Walsh and Nick, you know, and Ford. You can imagine they just kind of the best of the the old eye patch studio directors.
What are some of the films that you played in that program?
Oh, the eye patch program was not me, okay. But that I was just saying, sort of like, you know, the great thing about New York is that while you have just sort of very focused, you know, they just did they're sandwiched me between their King Vidor retrospective and New York Film Festival. I was like pretty thrilled about that. And they did, but it was, you know, I wanted, well, now I'm going down rabbit holes. I programmed just a bunch of movies that I loved at 15, 16, 17 that just sort of like shattered my mind and tattooed themselves into my brain. You know, Greaser's Palace, Heavy Traffic by Ralph Bakshi, Lilith, the last Robert Rawson movie that he adapted from this kind of salacious novel with Warren Beatty and Gene Seberg. That was the one that kind of rewatching all of these movies that sort of inspired the writing of this movie, and you know, consciously and unconsciously. It was a bunch of movies that I sort of chose from, but all were like impactful to me, again, as a teenager, and kind of formed maybe the ideas around this movie, you know, and visually, narratively, character-wise. These movies were the ones that I was thinking about. But Lilith is a movie starring Gene Seberg, you know, directed by Robert Rawson, you know, a handful of great movies, you know, namely The Hustler. But this was, he adapted this. Gene Seberg plays this kind of lunatic who's, you know, a sociopath who's locked up in a insane asylum. And Warren Beatty is this guy all, you know, whacked out from, he gets out of the war and kind of moves to this small town. And the atmosphere is this kind of sad, rainy, gray, it's a black and white movie, but it's a gray atmosphere. It's a little like HUD, you know, with this kind of this small town. He kind of comes back to this town and he's kind of a fish out of water and bumping into people he knows, but, you know, he's sort of like a different, changed guy. And he's just this warped guy that gets a job in an insane asylum, you know? It starts with kind of this weird kind of interview and whatever. He falls in love with Gene Seberg, who is sort of like this incredible, beautiful, but insane woman that works there and is, that's my ride, as they say. That movie definitely.
Wait, just wait a second for it to go. Because it's very loud.
I hope they're okay. Whoever they're getting.
You were saying about Lilith, that movie.
Yeah, I'm trying to think. You know, it's really a hard question because it's so rare that I'm affected by a movie at this point. You know what I mean? I think that, I'm sure, I don't know, you just like, you get fed up with, I get fed up with movies. I really have like a low tolerance at this point for, I'll turn off old bad movies, you know what I mean? Like a lot of old movies just suddenly are bad to me, where you just go, oh, this is just a rip-off of this, and then you can enjoy it, but like, you know, at a certain point I check out. For
I can just see
crap.
the headline for this. Owen Kline, filmmaker, hates movies.
Fuck movies. They suck. I'm sick of them. But, you know, I guess...
Maybe a different question there.
I was trying to think about, I mean, can we come back to that at the end?
Of course we can, yeah.
Because I really have to think, it's been a while. It's really been a while since I've been really affected.
Well, let's assume that anybody watching this video has already seen your film and, you know, perhaps has gone in without context and now wants to learn a little bit more about you and about your film.
Uh-oh.
How would you describe Funny Pages?
I don't know. How do you distill? I don't know. I spent 6 years on this. It's really hard to distill it. How would I describe it? It's a comedy about a teenage cartoonist who, you know, thinks he has an idea, you know, when you're 15, 16, 17, whatever, 18, young person, you think you have an idea of how the real world works or how, you know, what it takes to be an artist. And it's sort of a comedy about those absurd notions, and this kid is kind of ambition and self-destruction kind of colliding in a very particular deranged way. I'd put it that way, maybe.
I think that's a good way of putting it. The Safdie brothers produced this film, and you've talked about Frownland being really important to you when you were sort of growing up. Where do you sort of see their influence on your work or their kind of fingerprints on this movie?
Sure. Yeah, so Frownland in particular, seeing that when it came out in New York 16 or something like that. You know, it was like a project that I knew from Anthology Film Archives people that it was this thing that he had been working on for a long time. He had screened some 6-hour version of it at Anthology that all these people kind of tore apart, and he kind of boiled it down into this brilliant fucking movie. And Ronnie's work and just knowing Ronnie growing up in New York and bumping into him. Ronald Bronstein, yeah. Growing him up in New York and bumping into him at like the WFMU record fair or something while I was looking for stupid Nutty Squirrel type novelty records or whatever, and he was kind of going, I'm not collecting records anymore. I'm going through, you know, I'm just trying to find old mags. I'm just into mags. If you see anyone with vintage mags, Cream or this and that, and you know, just knowing Ronnie and his influences leading up to seeing Frownland and then going to see this thing that's sort of like, wow, this is Mad Magazine, this is Crumb, this is George Kuchar, this is Ramones in a way. There's all these kind of crude personal things that he had kind of been inspired by and put it into this expressive, kind of self-reflexive, oddly personal movie, and found his own voice within that outside of any kind of system and didn't ask permission. And there was just sort of a level of wrongness to it, you know what I mean? It was like nobody would ever will themselves to make a movie like this unless they really had to make it, you know? And that in some way, and sort of how he was kind of lyrically able to kind of communicate his frustrations with the world in communication with other people. He just did it in such a way that made me want to do that. You know what I mean? That was the first one first movie where I thought like, wow, well, you know, this is different, and it's definitely stuck out like a sore thumb in a great way, you know, in that sort of mumblecore era, as did the Safdies' work. And I met them. Josh graduated from BU in 2006, Boston University, and moved to New York, and I was aware of his short films, and this movie We're Going to the Zoo that he made was playing around, and again, it was another kind of small 16 millimeter weird kind of thing, and I was just drawn to him and its work, and started crewing for their stuff and acted for them, and learned it's just like you don't ask permission. You just don't ask permission. It's the only way to make anything. Nobody wants to make your weird thing, so you just don't ask permission. You have to figure out a way to do it. You got to find the means, even if you don't have the means. You know what I mean? And we were running around New York with Josh doing the first short film he was doing out of college, and you know, I remember going to Chinatown and filming this scene where two people, you know, the two actors went into a Chinese restaurant and ordered Chinese food and sat at a table, and we were filming through the glass outside. You know what I mean? And we didn't ask permission. There were no permits. And we just kept filming, and I was sticking the boom mic into through the window of the place, or the doorway or something, and eventually somebody came out and shooed us away, and the scene was over, and they had to keep eating dinner and meet up with us after. And that's how I thought, you know, movies like this should be made and were made, you know, and that sort of cemented it and made me want to do it, because nothing about the system of making movies ever seemed entirely possible. And when I tried to go that route and tried to go any kind of a commercial route in my life. You know, I tried to be a print cartoonist. I tried to be a comedy writer and submitted packets to Letterman and all this stuff. And, you know, I was too green. I was like 22, 23, 24, 25. I was completely, you know. So I just kind of funneled, I don't know, comedy and comics and all of my failures into this movie that nobody wanted me to make. Couldn't get the money for except through the Safdies eventually. It was 3 or 4 years of just, or it was like 2 or 3 years of trying to get it made, and then a year of development, and then made it.
Who's laughing now?
Me. But, you know, me, but not too much, because I'm laughing now, but I don't, you know, the future is uncertain still.
Thanks for talking to me, Owen Kline.
Thank you for talking to me. Thank you. Thank you for the Diet Coke, too. It's great. I'm gonna finish it on camera.
In one gulp?
2. Thank you.